Let's get into our conversation for today now. In a bit to address the ongoing foreign exchange crisis, the Central Bank of Nigeria has revoked the licenses of about more than 4,000 bureau de change operators, accusing them of failing to observe regulatory provisions. And according to the CBN, this move is aimed at curbing the activities of unscrupulous BDC operators and ensuring the stability of the foreign exchange market. To provide some perspective now, I'm joined by social commentator, former presidential spokesman, Mr. Reno Omokri. He joins me live now. Thank you for your time, Mr. Omokri. Just before we delve into our conversation for today, you may want to comment on these, development. Later on today, we're going to see professional colleagues, converge in Lagos to honor the legacy of the late group CEO of Access Holdings. What does exit of this banking giant mean for the industry? I think we should start from there.
Well, I don't really know much about Mr. Wigwe, and I think it's going to be opportunistic of me to talk about him. A lot of justice has been done by his friends and colleagues. They've talked about him, and I think he was a gentleman that did a lot of good for our banking sector. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. You've been commenting and writing on the challenges facing the FX market. I think that's a core conversation for today, and the depreciation of the Naira. In one of your write-ups, you believed that nobody is coming to save Nigeria, and you said that only Nigerians can save Nigeria. Could you speak to that in clear terms?
Well, then, the only way that a country's currency, actually, there are four ways. Once you float your currency as a country, there are only four ways by which your country's currency is going to go up or down. So the four ways are this: industrial output, and I'm going to come to that later. And then you also have market sentiments. And then you've got export and imports. And finally, you've got technical market data. Now, for industrial output, you talked about the gross domestic product of a country. In the case of Nigeria, in the last quarter, we grew by about 3.46. So on that score, we're good. Now, on export-import, if your exports are more than your imports, then you're going to have a trade surplus. If your imports are more than your exports, you're going to have a trade deficit. Nigeria has a trade deficit. So that is, it's a bit of a negative. But then, even when you have a trade deficit, you can actually correct some of that deficit when you have capital importation. And if you look at the last quarter figure for 2023, you see that there's been an increase in capital importation into Nigeria by 66%. So we can use that to offset some of our trade deficit. Now, the third one is sentiments. What are the organized private sector in your country? What are they doing with your currency? So if you look at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, which we were just talking about, NGX, the two largest corporations on the NGX by market capitalization are going to be Airtel and MTN. Between the two of them, they're responsible for sending something like $15 to $20 million out of Nigeria every day. I'm not saying every week or every month, every single day. Now, that's a negative sentiment. So it's not good at all. Then finally, you've got market data, technical market data. Now, what this means is that you've got BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, you've got the ratings agencies, you've got Fitch, you've got Moody's, you've got Standard & Poor's. Then you've got FX companies like XE.com. They have people in Nigeria and all over the world. What they do, they go to the parallel market, they go to bureau de change, they go to like the Malam at Zonfo, and they ask, how much are you selling the Naira to the dollar today? And then they impute that in their data. Now, that is where you got manipulators manipulating the value of the Naira. So they don't just look at online, on the ground, they also go online, everywhere the Naira has been sold. And so there's something called the P2P platform on Binance, which is the peer-to-peer platform. Now, dollars are not being sold there, but you have a stable currency, a cryptocurrency called USDT, which is kind of like, it has one-on-one parity with the US dollar. So for all intents and purposes, when you're trading USDT, it's taken by these people who set the spot rates of currency around the world that you're trading US dollars. And you've got unscrupulous Nigerians who are going there and then creating adverts for dollars. So maybe, for example, yesterday the parallel market rate, or rather the official rate, was about 1,500 Naira to a dollar. They're going to set up ads, say that they want to buy USDT for 1,800 Naira a dollar. And they're going to say they want to buy like maybe $1 million worth of USDT, knowing that such an order is very unlikely to be fulfilled. The purpose for which they're doing this is to manipulate the technical market data to just depreciate the Naira and appreciate the dollar for their own selfish purpose. So that is the challenge that we're having right now. And the steps so far taken by the federal government of Nigeria are actually very good. The other aspect of it is that in the last 1 year, $26 billion has left Nigeria via Binance. And a lot of people, some people who are making some money from Binance are complaining. I mean, Nigerians are complaining. They don't understand that if you have a complete GDP is about $500 billion. If you have $26 billion leaving your country through a platform, that's 5.6% of your GDP. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? It could be coming from bandits, from terrorists, from kidnappers, from criminals, from crooked politicians you do not know. So a government will be remiss on its responsibilities if they do not do something about that. And I'm glad that Nigeria is doing something about that, because you got to understand, Binance has a history of money laundering and other criminal activities. That's why in more than 20 countries of the world, they are either outrightly banned or severely limited. And these are not just like mushroom countries or banana republic. I'm talking about Australia, Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Italy, Bangladesh, Kazakhstan. These are countries that are, in the United States, for instance, Binance was charged with criminal activities of money laundering. And their CEO at that time, Chang Zhao, pleaded guilty, paid a fine of $4.3 billion. He was ousted, they got in a new CEO, Richard Teng. Now, what Richard Teng is allowing to happen in Nigeria, it cannot be allowed to happen in his own country, Singapore. So if we are able to take care of these four aspects, and then also to make sure that the kind of, let's say, economic sabotage that was going on in our economy through Binance are being taken care of, the Naira is going to rise. The other thing that we need to do is that we need to buy made in Nigeria. So where there are made in Nigeria alternatives to goods and services, always buy them. So you want to build with Dangote, you want to call with Glo, you want to fly with Airpace, you want to eat with Natco. So we have to make sure that our central bank is no longer giving people money to import $200 million worth of human hair from Vietnam, $75 million worth of French champagne from France, 25 million pounds every year of Scotch whiskey. I'll give you a very good example. Take this scenario. If you buy a Derica tomato paste from Italy for 1,000 Naira, your money immediately leaves Nigeria and goes to Italy. Okay. But if you buy made in Nigeria, go ahead.
Okay. It's important to look at the journey to the free fall of the Naira. I mean, because some people have said we didn't just get here overnight. And so there have been a lot of issues, a lot of processes. There's a journey down here. So how would you describe the Nigerian economy in terms of, the regulations, policies that have been real out by the previous, government? There's also the position of the CBN that there was an intervention of 10 trillion Naira by the past administration in the economy. So the question is, how did we get here? And what are we doing right now to address that challenge?
Nigerians do not yet understand that the Naira has been floated. And that's why I started this conversation with the four things that affect the floated currency. Prior to this administration coming into being, the Naira was not floated. The Naira was a currency that was almost pegged. Now, what does that mean? It means that Nigeria was spending $1.5 billion every month to artificially inflate the value of the Naira. We were defending the Naira with $1.5 billion every month. Fact check me. Now, this was not money that we had. This is money that we were borrowing. So don't say that, we now have a free fall. No, we have a floated currency. So when you have a floated currency, like I said, even your government, for instance, the government of the United States does not determine the value of the US dollar. The US dollar is a floated currency, just like the Naira is not a floated currency. So only four things are going to determine the value of the US dollar and the Naira. Industrial output, like I said, market sentiments, export and import, and then technical market data. So you got to understand that Nigerians are not understanding that yet. It is our own consumption, our consumption behavior right now is going to have more impact on the Naira than even our government. Government policy can only influence the value of the Naira. It cannot determine the value of the Naira. So when you have 133 million Nigerians spending $20 million every day on MTN and Airtel, and then these two companies are taking that money out of Nigeria to India and South Africa, the Naira is not going to get to its proper value. So you have to, where there are made in Nigeria alternatives, like I was saying before, you asked that question, Let's take tomato. If you buy the Rica tomato from Italy for 1,000 naira, that money has left Nigeria immediately. So it has no value in Nigeria anymore. By the time you eat that tomato paste in your soup, it's gone. Gone with the wind, gone forever. But if you buy tomato paste from a company that produces it in Kano, that company is going to take your 1,000 naira. They're going to pay the farmer around Kano, maybe in Woodhill, 1,000 naira. That farmer will take that money, pay school fees for his child. The school where that child goes to will pay contractors, caterers to feed the children. Your money is circulating in Nigeria, and that is how a currency gains value. So Nigerians have to reorientate themselves. Do not fly British Airways, do not fly KLM, do not fly Lufthansa. Fly Air Peace, except Air Peace does not go to that route. Look at me, everything I'm wearing from head to toe is made in Nigeria. We have to stop this habit of going to Freelux nightclub and then we spend 5 million and then we come on Twitter and then or X and then we show the receipt and post. That is what is now bringing down the value of our currency because we have a floated currency. We have to, even if you want to go to Freelux, go there and drink palm wine and Zobo. So we need to be buying made in Nigeria goods and services. That's the only way. There is nobody is going to come and do it for us. You cannot have Nigerians spending $200 million on human hair. Nigerians don't spend $100 million on books, yet they're spending $200 million on human hair. That is why the Naira is going down. We've got to change our consumption habits.
We've seen recent measures from the CBN, and of course, you just suggested that we need to buy made in Naira. So apart from clamping down on the BDCs and, establishing strict regulation and regulatory environment, talk to us, what are the steps you believe are critical to addressing the current challenges of the free fall of the Naira? What do we need to do to bring Naira back to the position where it was about 2 years or 3 years ago?
It's not going to happen. 2 or 3 years ago, the Naira was not floated. So what you had 2 or 3 years ago was an artificial Naira. The CBN was spending $1.5 billion every month to give it that rate. Look, I'm urging your viewers, your audience, Google what I'm telling you. So stop expecting that you're going to have that same Naira 2 or 3 years ago. It's gone forever. That was not a real Naira. That was a Naira that was being defended by the CBN. We were not spending $1.5 billion every month on education or on roads or on infrastructure. We were spending it defending the Naira. That's why we are here today. The Muhammadu Buhari administration technically almost destroyed this country. We are reviving ourselves. We cannot get to back to that era. What we need to do right now is, like I said, we need to get the government to say, okay, there's going to be free education from nursery all the way to secondary school. So everybody in Nigeria has got to have that qualitative free education. If a state, because obviously that kind of education by the constitution is the responsibility of the state. If a state cannot afford it, the federal government must step in, like former President Jonathan did with the Almajiri schools. Then what you have to do also, you got to say, okay, everybody from 65 years and above, if you're not earning a pension from the government, you're going to be you registered into the social investment scheme and you'll be getting something like maybe 35,000 naira every month so you can buy food. Every other person in Nigeria, as long as you are not disabled, the government should not give you a dime. If you want to die, die. That is what it is. Our wastages, all this money that we are wasting, we have to start putting it into production.
Just a moment. Let me pause you a bit, Mr. Omokri. We'll get now back to our conversation earlier. Well, of course, Mr. Omokri, Reno Omokri, presidential spokesman, was talking to us on the challenges, of course, what the government needs to do to address the challenges facing the FX market and as to restore the Naira. Thank you, Mr. Omokri, for your time. If you're there and if you can hear me, speak to us about, given the current macroeconomic environment, particularly in the context of concerns regarding the MPC meeting outcome. So what key economic indicators should we be paying attention to between now and the next MPC meeting, which of course is on the 25th or 26th or so of this month?
Well, what we should be looking at, we saw that capital importation increased into Nigeria in the last quarter. So it increased by 66%. And that's a good sign. It means that even if we have a trade deficit, we can use some of that capital importation to offset some of our trade deficit. Now, another thing that we saw that was quite good not in the last quarter, but in this quarter, in January, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, of which you're just talking about now, plus an all-share index of over 100,000 basis points. Now, that is very good. So that it shows that there's some confidence in the Nigerian economy. We want to keep on doing that. What we want to not do is that we don't want to go back to this practice that was under the Buhari administration, whereby we are owing money to spend on consumption. So that has to go. I was reading somewhere where Femi Falana said that this administration should review the removal of fuel subsidy. It should probably come back, review the flotation of the Naira. That is going to be a big mistake. Fuel subsidy has to go. It has to go. It should not come back. We're getting used to it. These are just the growth pains. We're getting wind. And then the Naira should continue to be floated. As long as the Naira is floated, we're going to see an increase in capital importation into Nigeria. But if the Naira, if we go back to spending $1.5 billion to defend the Naira, and then we have multiple exchange rates, this capital importation, we are seeing that is increasing, it's just going to dry up. So that's one thing we're going to do. Also, we want to be careful that we do not feed inflation by increasing money on social investments that are just giving people money. We want to do it in a way whereby it's tied to work. So this whole idea of just giving people money, which temporarily has been stopped because of the corruption that was found out in that scheme. We have to look for a way to tie it to production. So if you look at Brazil, when Brazil had this similar problem as we did, they had what they call the Bolsa Familia. The Bolsa Familia. Obviously, that's Portuguese. But basically, what that means is that you target families. So you say, okay, for every child in Nigeria, you got to be in school. Now, for every family that sends their children to school, they're going to get a certain amount of money. Every month, the school principal will stamp a document and say, okay, well, the child has come to school, the parents are going to produce that document and they'll get some money. If you tie the social investment scheme to that, what you're going to have is that you're going to have children getting out of the streets, going into school, because people like money. If you say you're going to get money by sending your children to school, they're going to do that. And then once you have every Nigerian child educated, you're going to have a reduction in crime, you're going to have an increase in productivity, and then our population is going to stabilize because educated women have less children. And then once you now have money going into the mother, because Bolsa Familia, the money is not going to the father, it's going to the mother. Once you have money going to the matriarch of families, the fastest way to spread wealth in any society, any community, is by empowering women. Once you do that, then you're going to empower them. You're going to have these nano cottage industries all over the world, like what Mohammed Yunus did in Bangladesh. Those are the things that we need to be doing. But if we start just giving money to able-bodied men as a social investment scheme, it's going to lead to hydra-headed inflation, which is going to undo all of the advantages that the removal of fuel subsidy and the inflation of Naira has brought about.
I think we just have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Social commentator, former presidential spokesman, Mr. Reno Omokri. Thank you for your insight on Business Nigeria.
And thank you for having me. God bless you.